The throne room of the Valorian Empire was a place of wonder. Giant crystals rose from the floor to the ceiling, each one glowing with soft purple light. The walls were made of a strange metal that seemed to change color when you looked at it from different angles. In the center of this beautiful room sat Emperor Zorath on his throne made of pure white crystal. Zorath was old by Valorian standards. He had ruled his empire for over 300 years. His silver skin had begun to show lines of age, and his 4 violet eyes looked tired. The war had done this to him. The endless, terrible war with the Krik's dominion had drained everything from him and his people. The Kriks were monsters. There was no other word for them. They were a race of insect-like creatures that lived only to conquer and destroy. For nearly a century, they had been attacking Valorian space. Millions had died. Entire planets had been burned to ash. The Valorian fleets, once the pride of the galaxy, were now shadows of their former glory. Zorath needed help. He needed allies, and he had found them in the most unlikely place. Earth. The humans were young. Their species had only discovered space travel a few hundred years ago. By galactic standards, they were babies. But these babies had teeth. Sharp teeth. When the Kriks had first attacked human colonies, everyone expected the young species to fall quickly. Instead, the humans had fought back with a fury that shocked the entire galaxy. They did not run. They did not surrender. They stood their ground and died by the thousands, but they took even more Kriks with them. Now, Zorath wanted to bring the humans into an alliance with the Valorian Empire. Together, they could finally defeat the Kriks, but alliances needed to be sealed with something stronger than words and signatures. They needed to be sealed with blood. With marriage, the door to the throne room opened, and Princess Lyrie walked in. She was the youngest of Zorath's 7 children. Her silver skin was smooth and flawless, and her 3 violet eyes sparkled like gems. She was considered the most beautiful princess in the empire, but her true gift was her gentle heart. While her brothers and sisters trained for war, Lyrie painted pictures and wrote poetry. She believed in peace and kindness. She had no idea what her father was about to tell her. "You called for me, father?" Lyrie asked, her voice soft and musical. "Yes, my daughter. Please, come closer." Lyrie walked across the crystal floor, her long silver gown flowing behind her. She stopped before the throne and looked up at her father with love and trust in her eyes. Zorath felt his heart break a little. What he was about to do would hurt her deeply, but he had no choice. The survival of his empire depended on it. "Lyrie, you know that our war with the Kriks goes badly," he began. "Yes, father. I'd pray every night for our soldiers. Prayers are not enough anymore. We need help. Real help. The humans have agreed to join us in this fight, but they want something in return." Lyrie nodded slowly. "What do they want?" Zorath took a deep breath. "They want a marriage between one of their commanders and a member of the royal family. I have chosen you." The color drained from Lyrie's face. Her 3 eyes went wide with shock and fear. "Me? Father, you cannot be serious." "I am very serious. The human commander, Jack Sullivan, has been selected. He is their finest warrior. With him leading their forces alongside ours, we can finally win this war." Lyrie took a step back. Her legs felt weak. She had heard stories about Jack Sullivan. Everyone in the galaxy had heard stories about him. They called him the Ghost of Arcturus. 3 years ago, the Kriks had attacked a human colony on a moon called Arcturus 7. The colony had no military protection. It was just farmers and families. When the Krik ships appeared in the sky, everyone thought they were dead. Jack Sullivan had been passing through the system on a routine patrol with only a small squad of soldiers. He could have run. He could have called for backup and waited. Instead, He landed on the moon and told the colonists to hide. For 3 days, Jack and his 12 soldiers held the line against over 500 Krix warriors. They fought in the streets. They fought in the buildings. They fought in the tunnels beneath the ground. One by one, Jack's soldiers fell. By the end of the second day, he was alone, but he did not stop fighting. When backup finally arrived on the morning of the fourth day, they found Jack Sullivan standing in the middle of the colony's main square. Around him lay the bodies of hundreds of Krix. His armor was destroyed. His weapons were empty. He was covered in blood from head to toe, most of it not his own. In his hands, he held nothing but a broken knife. He had saved every single colonist. Over 2,000 men, women, and children owed their lives to him. But the stories did not stop there. Jack Sullivan had led dozens of battles against the Krix. He had never lost. He had done things that seemed impossible. He had earned a reputation as the most dangerous human alive. And now, Larry was expected to marry him. "Not him, Dad. I'm afraid of that human warrior," whispered the alien princess in tears. Zorath stood from his throne and walked down the steps to his daughter. He took her hands in his. "Lyri, I understand your fear, but I have no other choice. Our people are dying. Our empire is falling. The humans are our only hope. But why me?" Lyri cried. "Why not one of my sisters? They are stronger than me. They are warriors. I am just a painter. I know nothing of war." "That is exactly why I chose you," Zorath said gently. "Your sisters would see this marriage as a duty. They would never truly accept a human. But you, Lyri, you have a gift for seeing the good in others. You have a kind heart. Perhaps you can build something real with this man." Lyri shook her head, tears streaming down her silver cheeks. "Father, please. I have heard what he does to his enemies. He is a monster." "He is a soldier," Zorath corrected. "There is a difference. What he does to his enemies, he does to protect his people. Is that not honorable? I do not want to marry a man covered in blood." Zorath sighed. He had expected this reaction, but it still pained him to see his daughter so afraid. "The human delegation arrives tomorrow. You will meet Jack Sullivan. Talk to him. See for yourself what kind of man he is. I'm not asking you to love him, Lyri. I'm asking you to give him a chance." Lyri looked into her father's eyes and saw the desperation there. He was not doing this to hurt her. He was doing this to save their people. She understood that. But understanding did not make the fear go away. "One chance," she whispered. "I will give him one chance. But if he is the monster the stories say he is, I will not marry him. Not even to save the Empire." Zorath nodded. "That is all I ask." He kissed her forehead and watched her walk away, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. When the door closed behind her, the Emperor returned to his throne and sat down heavily. He hoped, with all his heart, that Jack Sullivan was not the monster his reputation suggested. Because if he was, Zorath would have to choose between his daughter's happiness and survival of his people. And that was a choice no father should ever have to make. The morning came too quickly for Princess Lyri. She had not slept at all. Instead, she had spent the entire night staring at the ceiling of her bedroom. Her mind filled with terrible images of the human warrior she was supposed to marry. She imagined a giant man with cold eyes and hands stained with blood. She imagined someone who spoke in growls and looked at others like they were prey. She imagined a monster in human form. When her servants came to dress her for the arrival ceremony, Lyri could barely stand. Her 3 violet eyes were red from crying, and her silver skin had lost its usual glow. She looked sick with fear. "My lady, are you well?" asked her head servant, a kind old Valorian woman named Myra. "No," Lyri answered honestly. "I am not well at all. Myra did not ask any more questions. She had heard about the marriage arrangement. Everyone in the palace had heard. She simply helped the princess into her finest gown and arranged her hair in the traditional style for greeting important guests. By the time Lyrie made her way to the grand landing platform, the human ship was already visible in the purple sky. It was a strange vessel, different from Valorian ships in every way. Where Valorian ships were smooth and curved like flowing water, the human ship was angular and sharp like a blade. It was painted in dark colors with bright letters on the side that spelled out its name, Starbound. Emperor Zorath stood at the front of the welcoming party, dressed in his ceremonial armor. Beside him stood his generals, his advisors, and his guards. Lyrie took her place next to her father, her hands clasped tightly in front of her to hide their trembling. "Remember," Zorath whispered to her, "give him a chance." Lyrie did not respond. She could not. Her throat had closed up with fear. The Starbound landed with a hiss of steam and the grinding of metal. A ramp extended from its belly, and then the door opened. The first person to step out was not Jack Sullivan. It was a woman with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. She wore a military uniform covered in medals and badges. Her walk was confident, her gaze alert. This was Lieutenant Grace Miller, Jack's second in command. Behind her came several other humans. Diplomats in fancy clothes, soldiers in clean uniforms, technicians carrying equipment. They all looked different from each other. Some had pale skin, some had dark skin, some had skin in between. Their eyes were all different colors. Their hair was all different styles. Humans, Lyrie realized, were a very varied species. And then he appeared. Jack Sullivan stepped onto the ramp, and everything seemed to stop. He was tall, but not as tall as Lyrie had imagined. His hair was dark and cut very short in the military style. His face was strong and serious, marked by a scar that ran from his left eyebrow down to his cheek. He wore a simple uniform without any fancy decorations, just a few small medals on his chest. But it was his eyes that caught Lyrie's attention. They were brown, like the earth of a garden after rain. And they were tired. So very tired. These were not the eyes of a monster. These were the eyes of a man who had seen too much pain and carried too much weight. Jack walked down the ramp and approached Emperor Zorath. He stopped at the proper distance and bowed his head in respect. "Emperor Zorath," he said, his voice deep but calm, "thank you for welcoming us to your world. The people of Earth are honored by this alliance." Zorath nodded, pleased by the human's manners. "Commander Sullivan, the honor is ours. You and your people have shown great courage against our common enemy. Together, we will bring the Cricks to their knees." "That is our hope as well," Jack replied. Then he turned to Lyrie, and their eyes met for the first time. Lyrie felt her heart beating faster. She expected him to look at her with desire or possession, like a prize he had won. Instead, his gaze was respectful, almost gentle. He bowed again, lower than he had bowed to her father. "Your Highness," he said softly, "it is an honor to meet you. I have heard that you are a gifted artist. I hope that one day you might show me your work." Lyrie opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She simply nodded, her eyes dropping to the ground. If Jack was offended by her silence, he did not show it. He simply smiled a small, sad smile and stepped back to stand with his people. The welcoming ceremony continued with speeches and formal greetings. Lyra stood through all of it like a statue, barely hearing a word. Her mind was spinning with confusion. This was not the monster she had expected. This was a man who bowed with respect and spoke with kindness. This was a man whose eyes held sadness, not cruelty, but she could not forget the stories. The hundreds of Cricks he had killed. The blood that covered him when the rescue ships arrived at Arcturus. The nickname that made enemies tremble. the ghost of Arcturus. A man can have kind eyes and still be a killer. Lyrie reminded herself of this again and again. Over the following days, the human delegation settled into the palace. They were given their own wing, with rooms and facilities suited to their needs. Jack was given the finest guest quarters, right next to the royal gardens. Lyrie did everything she could to avoid him. She changed her daily schedule so that she would never be in the same place as the humans. She took different hallways to reach her rooms. She stopped eating in the main dining hall and had her meals brought to her chambers instead. Her sisters thought she was being foolish. "He is not ugly," said Princess Vela, her oldest sister. "For a human, he is quite handsome. And he is famous, powerful. Many would be happy to have such a husband." "Then you marry him," Lyra replied bitterly. "I would if father had asked me. But he asked you. Stop hiding like a scared child and face your duty." But Lyrie could not face it. Every time she thought about standing next to Jack Sullivan at a wedding ceremony, her heart began to race and her breath became short. The fear was too strong. The days passed, and life in the palace found a new rhythm. The humans attended meetings with Valorian generals, planning strategies for the war. Jack spent hours in the war room, studying maps and discussing tactics. By all accounts, he was brilliant. His ideas were creative and bold. Even the Valorian generals, who had been skeptical of humans at first, began to respect him. But Lyrie saw none of this. She stayed in her rooms, painting pictures that she would never finish. She walked in her private garden only when she was sure no one else was there. She became a ghost in her own home. Emperor Zorath noticed his daughter's behavior and grew worried. "You cannot avoid him forever," he told her one evening. "The wedding is in 3 months. You need to at least talk to the man." "I have nothing to say to him," Lyra replied. "Then listen. Let him talk to you. Learn who he is beyond the stories." Lyrie shook her head. "The stories are enough. I know what he is." Zora sighed heavily. "You know nothing, daughter. You have built a monster in your mind based on rumors and legends. The real man might be very different. Or he might be exactly what the stories say. There is only one way to find out." But Lyrie was not ready to find out. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That night she walked to her private garden as usual. The sky was dark, lit only by the 3 moons that orbited Valoria Prime. The flowers in her garden glowed softly in the moonlight, their colors shifting from blue to purple to pink dot. This was her safe place, her sanctuary. Here, she could forget about the war, the wedding, and the human warrior who had come to claim her. She pushed open the garden gate and stepped inside. And there, sitting on her favorite bench, was Jack Sullivan. Lyrie froze at the garden gate. Her first instinct was to run, to turn around and go back to her room and hide under her blankets like a child. But her feet would not move. They stayed stuck to the ground as if roots had grown from her shoes. Jack noticed her immediately. He stood up quickly from the bench, surprise clear on his face. In his hands, he held a small device that glowed with soft light. "Princess Lyrie," he said, "I apologize. I did not mean to intrude on your private space. Lieutenant Miller told me this garden was open to guests. I can leave right away." He took a step toward the gate, ready to go. Something about that gesture touched Lyrie. He was not forcing himself on her. He was not demanding her time or attention. He was offering to leave, even though he had done nothing wrong. "No," she heard herself say. The word came out before she could stop it. "You may stay." Jack stopped walking and looked at her with genuine surprise. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he nodded slowly and returned to the bench. He did not sit down, though. He stood there, waiting for her to decide what happened next. Lyrie walked further into the garden. She did not sit next to him. Instead, she stood a few steps away, near a bush of glowing blue flowers. The silence between them was uncomfortable, heavy with things unsaid. Finally, Lyrie spoke. "What were you looking at? On that device?" Jack hesitated. He looked down at the glowing screen in his hands, and his face changed. The soldier's mask fell away, and underneath it was something raw and painful. Sadness. Deep, terrible sadness. "My family," he said quietly. He turned the device so Lyrie could see the screen. It was a picture of a little girl with brown eyes and messy brown hair. She was smiling at the camera, her 2 front teeth missing. She looked about 7 years old, maybe 8. "Her name is Molly," Jack continued. "She is my niece. My brother Danny's daughter." Lyrie studied the picture. The little girl looked so happy, so innocent. She had no idea about the horrors of war or the blood on her uncle's hands. "Where is your brother?" Lyrie asked. Jack's jaw tightened. He looked away, toward the 3 moons in the sky. "Dead. He and his wife Lisa were killed in a Krix raid 2 years ago. Their colony was attacked without warning. By the time help arrived, over 10,000 people were gone. Danny and Lisa were among them." Lyrie felt something shift inside her chest. It was a strange feeling, like a wall cracking. "I am sorry," she said, and she meant it. "Molly was at school on a different planet when it happened," Jack continued. "She survived, but she lost everything. Her parents, her home, her whole world." He looked back at the picture, his eyes filled with pain. "I promised her I would come home, that I would take care of her, that no Krix would ever hurt her again. And that is why you fight," Lyrie said slowly. Understanding began to dawn in her mind. Jack nodded. "I fight for her. I fight for every child like her. Every family that just wants to live in peace. Every colony that could be next." He put the device back in his pocket. "I fight because someone has to. Because if good people do nothing, the monsters win." Lyrie was quiet for a long moment. She looked at this man, this legendary warrior, and she saw something she had not expected to see. She saw a broken heart. She saw a man carrying grief like a heavy stone around his neck. She saw someone who did not enjoy violence but accepted it as a necessary burden. "The stories about you," she said finally. "They say you are a monster." Jack laughed, but there was no joy in the sound. It was bitter and tired. "I know what the stories say. The ghost of Arcturus, the human demon, the man who walks in blood." He shook his head. "Do you want to know the truth about Arcturus?" Lyrie nodded. Jack sat down on the bench and stared at his hands. They were rough hands, covered in scars. Hands that had done terrible things. "I was not supposed to be there," he began. "I was just passing through the system on a routine patrol. We picked up the distress signal from the colony. By the time we arrived, the Krix had already landed. 500 warriors against a farming colony with no defenses." He paused, his voice growing thick with emotion. "There were over 2,000 civilians, families, children, old people. They had no weapons, no training, nothing. The Krix would have slaughtered them all. That is what the Krix do. They do not take prisoners. They do not show mercy. They kill everything." Lyrie listened in silence, her 3 eyes fixed on his face. "I had 12 soldiers with me. 12 against 500. Every tactical manual in the galaxy would say the same thing. Call for backup and wait. Do not engage a force that outnumbers you 50 to 1. It is suicide, but you engaged anyway," Lyrie said. "I looked at those families," Jack replied. "I looked at the children crying for their parents. And I thought about Molly. I thought about how Danny would have felt if someone had been there to save him. If someone had been willing to fight." His hands clenched into fists. "So, I told my soldiers to prepare for combat. I gave him the choice to stay or go. Every single one of them stayed. They were brave. They were the bravest people I have ever known. Jack's voice cracked slightly. They all died, Princess. Every last one of them. By the end of the second day, I was alone. Alone against hundreds of cricks. How did you survive? Jack looked up at her, and his brown eyes were haunted. I did not think about surviving. I thought about giving the civilians time to hide. Time for backup to arrive. Every crix that came at me was one more crix that was not hunting women and children. So I kept fighting. Hour after hour. I stopped counting the bodies. I stopped feeling the wounds. I just kept fighting. For 3 days, Lyrie whispered. For 3 days, Jack confirmed. When the rescue ships finally arrived, I was standing in the middle of the colony square. My armor was destroyed. My guns were empty. I had nothing left but a broken knife. And around me were the bodies of almost 300 cricks. He looked at his scarred hands again. They call me a monster because of what I did that day. Maybe they are right. Maybe I became something less than human to do what I did. But I saved those people. Every single one of them lived because I was willing to become a monster. Lyrie felt tears forming in her eyes. She did not know what to say. Everything she had believed about this man was falling apart. I am not proud of what I am, Jack said softly. I do not enjoy killing. Every life I take weighs on me. I see their faces in my dreams. I hear their screams when I close my eyes. But I accept this burden because the alternative is worse. The alternative is letting the cricks win. Letting them do to others what they did to my brother. He stood up from the bench and faced her directly. His eyes were sincere, open, hiding nothing. I know you are afraid of me, Princess. I know you have heard the stories. But I am not the monster you believe me to be. I am just a man. A tired, broken man who is trying to protect the people he loves. Lyrie stood frozen, her tears now flowing freely down her silver cheeks. She saw Jack Sullivan with new eyes now. Not as a legend or a monster, but as a person. A person with pain and love and grief and hope. I do not know what to say, she admitted. Jack smiled sadly. You do not have to say anything. I just wanted you to know the truth. What you do with that truth is up to you. He bowed his head respectfully and walked toward the garden gate. As he passed her, he stopped for just a moment. Thank you for listening, he said quietly. It has been a long time since anyone wanted to hear my side of the story. Then he was gone, leaving Lyrie alone in her garden with a head full of thoughts and a heart full of confusion. The weeks that followed the garden conversation changed everything for Princess Lyrie. She stopped avoiding Jack Sullivan. Instead, she found herself looking for him. She would walk past the war room hoping to catch a glimpse of him through the windows. She would eat in the main dining hall again, sitting close enough to watch him, but far enough to pretend she was not watching. And sometimes, when the evening came and the 3 moons rose in the purple sky, she would go to her garden and find him there. They would talk about simple things at first. The weather on Valoria Prime, the strange foods that humans like to eat, the differences between their 2 cultures. But slowly, their conversations grew deeper. Jack told her about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about the cities that touched the clouds and the small towns where everyone knew everyone. He told her about pizza, which was his favorite food, and about baseball, which was his favorite sport. He told her about the music his mother used to play when he was a child, and the books his father used to read to him before bed. In return, Lyrie told him about Valoria, about the crystal caves that sang when the wind blew through them, about the festivals where people danced until the suns rose, about her paintings, which she finally showed him one evening in her private studio. Jack had looked at her artwork with genuine wonder. These are beautiful, he said. studying a painting of the royal gardens at sunset. "You have a gift, princess. You see beauty where others see only ordinary things." "Please," she replied, surprising herself. "Call me Lyrie. I think we have moved past formal titles." Jack smiled. It was a real smile this time, not the sad one he usually wore. "Then you must call me Jack." "Jack," she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. It felt strange but good, like trying a new food and discovering you like it. As the days passed, Lyrie learned many things about the man she was supposed to marry. She learned that he played a musical instrument called a guitar, though he said he was not very good at it. She learned that he wrote letters to his niece Molly every week, even though he could not send them until he returned to human space. She learned that he had a terrible fear of spiders, which made her laugh until her sides hurt. "Even the small ones?" she asked, still giggling. "Especially the small ones," Jack replied with a shudder. "They move so fast." "You fight the crics without fear, but you are scared of tiny insects?" "The crics, I understand. Spiders are just wrong." Lyrie laughed again, and Jack laughed with her. It was the first time she had heard him truly laugh. The sound was warm and bright, and it made something flutter in her chest. But not everyone in the palace was happy about the growing closeness between the princess and the human commander. General Vornis had served the Valorian Empire for over 200 years. He was a war hero, a master strategist, and one of the most respected military leaders in the galaxy. He was also deeply traditional. He believed that Valorians were superior to all other species. The idea of a human marrying into the royal family made his blood boil. In secret, Vornis had made contact with the Crick's Dominion. He had proposed a deal. If the Cricks helped him eliminate Jack Sullivan and Princess Lyrie, he would ensure that the alliance between Earth and Valoria fell apart. Without the humans, the war would continue. And in the chaos, Vornis would seize power for himself. The Cricks agreed. They sent a team of their best assassins, disguised as Valorian servants, into the palace. The attack came during a ceremonial banquet. The great hall was filled with hundreds of guests. Valorian nobles, human diplomats, military officers from both sides. Emperor Zareth sat at the head table with his family. Jack sat nearby, next to Lieutenant Grace Miller. Lyrie was seated across from Jack. She caught his eye and smiled. He smiled back. Then the lights went out. For a moment, there was only confusion. Guests cried out in surprise. Guards called for calm. Someone knocked over a glass. Then the killing began. The assassins moved like shadows through the darkness. They had weapons that made no sound, blades that cut through armor like paper. 3 Valorian guards fell in the first second. 2 more in the second. Lyrie heard screaming all around her. She could not see anything in the darkness. She tried to stand, but someone grabbed her arm. "Stay down!" Jack's voice shouted in her ear. He pulled her under the table, just as a blade swished through the air where her head had been. In the dim glow of emergency lights that were slowly coming on, Lyrie saw Jack's face. His eyes were sharp and focused. The soldier had returned. "Grace, rally the guards," he shouted into the chaos. "Protect the Emperor." Lieutenant Miller's voice called back from somewhere in the darkness. "On it, Commander." Jack looked at Lyrie. "Stay behind me. Do not move unless I tell you to." "What is happening?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Assassins. Cricks, by the look of them. They are after you and your father." "How many?" Jack peered over the edge of the table. In the flickering light, he counted the shadows moving through the hall. At least a dozen. Maybe more. He grabbed a ceremonial blade from a fallen guard. It was not a good weapon. It was made for show, not for real combat. But it would have to do. The first assassin came at them fast. It was huge, covered in black armor that hid its insect-like body. Its blade aimed directly at Lyri's heart. Jack moved faster. He blocked the strike with his stolen blade and spun, driving his elbow into the assassin's throat. The Cricks stumbled back, and Jack followed with a killing blow. One down. Two more assassins appeared, attacking from both sides. Jack pushed Lyri further behind him and met them head-on. He moved like water, flowing around their attacks and striking back with deadly precision. His blade found gaps in their armor. His fists broke their masks. His feet knocked them off balance in seconds. Both assassins lay dead at his feet. Across the hall, Lieutenant Miller had organized the surviving guards into a defensive formation around Emperor Zorath. They were holding their ground, but more assassins were coming. Jack grabbed Lyri's hand. "We need to move. This position is not safe. Where do we go?" "The kitchens. There is a service entrance that leads to the guard barracks. We can regroup there." They ran through the chaos, Jack leading the way. More assassins tried to stop them. 1, then 3, then 5. Jack cut through them all, his stolen blade dancing in the emergency lights. He moved with a grace and power that Lyri had never seen before. Every strike was perfect. Every movement was efficient. He wasted nothing. This was the ghost of Arcturus. This was the man who had held off 500 Cricks alone. They reached the kitchen just as another wave of assassins appeared. Jack pushed Lyri through the door and turned to face them. "Go," he shouted. "Find the guards. Tell them what is happening. I will not leave you." Lyra cried. "You have to. If you die, the Alliance dies with you. Your people need you alive. Jack." He looked at her one last time, his brown eyes soft despite the violence around him. "I will find you. I promise." Then he closed the door and faced the assassins alone. Lyri ran through the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. She could hear the sounds of combat behind her. Metal striking metal. Cries of pain. Thuds of bodies hitting the floor. She found the service entrance and burst through it. Guards were already running toward the Great Hall, alerted by the sounds of battle. "The Great Hall!" Lyri shouted at them. "Assassins, help him! Please, help him!" The guards rushed past her, weapons drawn. Lyri wanted to follow them. She wanted to run back and fight beside Jack, but she knew he was right. She needed to stay alive. For her people. For the Alliance. So she stayed where she was and prayed to every god. She knew that Jack Sullivan would keep his promise. The battle in the Great Hall lasted less than 15 minutes. But to Lyri, standing alone in the cold corridor outside the kitchens, it felt like a lifetime. She heard everything. The clash of blades. The screams of the wounded. The heavy thuds of bodies falling. She heard voices shouting orders and voices crying for help. She heard silence, terrible silence, that lasted too long. And then she heard cheering. The door to the kitchen burst open and Lieutenant Grace Miller appeared. Her uniform was torn and stained with blood, but she was smiling. "It is over, Princess. We got them all." "Jack," Lyri gasped. "Where's Jack? Is he alive?" Grace's smile faded slightly. "He is alive, but he is hurt. Come with me." Lyri ran faster than she had ever run in her life. She followed Grace through the kitchen, through the Great Hall, past the bodies of fallen assassins and the medics treating wounded guests. She barely noticed any of it. All she could think about was Jack. She found him sitting against a wall near the main entrance. A medic was wrapping a bandage around his left arm. Blood had soaked through his uniform in several places. His face was pale and his breathing was heavy, but he was alive. "Jack!" Lyri dropped to her knees beside him, not caring that she was getting blood on her gown. "You are hurt. How badly are you hurt?" Jack looked up at her and managed a weak smile. I've had worse. Just some cuts. Nothing serious. Nothing serious. You are covered in blood. Most of it is not mine." Lyrie did not know whether to laugh or cry. She did both, tears streaming down her silver face, while a strange sound that might have been laughter escaped her lips. "You saved me," she whispered. "You could have run. You could have hidden. But you stayed and fought." "Of course I did," Jack replied simply. "I told you I would protect you. I meant it." The medic finished his work and moved on to other wounded. Lyrie stayed kneeling beside Jack, holding his uninjured hand in both of hers. She did not care who saw. She did not care what anyone thought. "How many?" she asked quietly. "How many did you fight?" Jack closed his eyes wearily. 12, I think. Maybe more. It was hard to count in the dark. 12 assassins. Trained Crix killers. And he had fought them all to protect her. "You are the man the stories talk about," Lyrie said. "But the stories are wrong about one thing." "What is that?" "They say you are a monster. But monsters do not fight to protect others. Monsters do not care about little girls who lost their parents. Monsters do not sit in gardens and talk about music and food and silly fears about spiders." She squeezed his hand tighter. "You are not a monster, Jack Sullivan. You are the bravest man I have ever known." Jack opened his eyes and looked at her. Really looked at her, like he was seeing her for the first time. "Lyrie, I—" "Do not speak," she said gently. "Rest. We can talk later. We will have plenty of time." In the hours that followed, the truth about the attack came to light. General Vornis was arrested when evidence was found connecting him to the Crix assassins. He confessed everything under interrogation, hoping for mercy. He received none. Emperor Zorath sentenced him to eternal imprisonment in the Crystal Caves, where he would spend the rest of his very long life in darkness and silence. The Crix Dominion officially denied any involvement in the attack, but no one believed them. If anything, the assassination attempt only strengthened the alliance between Earth and Valoria. Both sides now had even more reason to hate the Crix and even more reason to fight together. 3 days after the attack, Emperor Zorath called a meeting of his court. He stood before his people with his family beside him, his 7 children, his advisors, his generals, and Jack Sullivan, his arms still bandaged but his spirit unbroken. "I offered the humans an alliance," Zorath declared, his voice ringing through the crystal hall. "I offered them trade and military cooperation. I offered them marriage into the royal family. But the humans have given us something far greater in return." He turned to Jack and bowed his head. The Emperor of the Valorian Empire bowed to a human soldier. "They have shown us what true loyalty looks like. Commander Sullivan risked his life to protect my daughter. He fought alone against impossible odds. He nearly died saving a princess who, by his own account, had avoided him for weeks and treated him with fear and suspicion." Lyrie felt her cheeks grow warm with shame. But Jack just smiled at her. "The humans are not our allies," Zorath continued. "They are our brothers, our sisters, our family. And we will stand with them until the Crix are defeated and every peaceful world in the galaxy is free from their terror." The hall erupted in cheers. Valorians and humans embraced. Old suspicions melted away in the light of shared respect and common purpose. That evening, Lyrie walked to her private garden for the last time as a single woman. Tomorrow, the wedding preparations would begin. In 1 week, she would marry Jack Sullivan and become the first Valorian princess to wed a human. She was not afraid anymore. Jack was already there, sitting on the same bench where they had first spoken. His guitar rested in his lap. When he saw her coming, he smiled that warm, real smile she had grown to love. "I thought I might find you here," she said, sitting down beside him. "I like this place. It is peaceful. Yes, it is. She looked at the glowing flowers, the shimmering leaves, the three moons rising in the purple sky. It is my favorite place in all the palace. And now it is your favorite place too. Now it is our favorite place, Jack corrected gently. Lyrie smiled. Our place. I like that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the beauty of the garden and the warmth of each other's company. Finally, Lyrie spoke again. I owe you my life, Jack. You owe me nothing. I did what any decent person would do. That is not true. Many people would have run. Many people would have saved themselves. You chose to stay and fight. Jack put down his guitar and took her hand. His grip was gentle, careful, as if she were made of glass. Lyrie, I need you to understand something. When I agreed to this marriage alliance, I expected it to be political. A partnership for the sake of our peoples. I did not expect to feel anything. Lyrie's heart began to beat faster. And now? And now, I cannot imagine going back to a universe where I do not know you. You are kind. You are beautiful. You see good in others when they cannot see it in themselves. You gave me a chance when everyone else only saw a monster. Tears formed in Lyrie's violet eyes. Jack, I cannot promise to be perfect, he continued. I am a soldier. I carry wounds that will never fully heal. I have done things that I will regret for the rest of my life. But I can promise to protect you, to respect you, and to try every single day to be worthy of your trust. Lyrie reached up and touched his scarred face. She traced the line that ran from his eyebrow to his cheek, the mark of countless battles and endless sacrifice. When I first heard that I was to marry you, I was terrified, she admitted. I imagined a monster, a killer without a soul. I cried and begged my father to choose someone else. I know, Jack said softly. I heard the stories about how you reacted. But I was wrong. So very wrong. She moved closer to him, close enough to feel the warmth of his body. You are not a monster, Jack Sullivan. You are the best man I have ever known. And I am honored to become your wife. Jack's eyes glistened with emotion. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers, a gesture of intimacy that transcended their different cultures. Thank you, he whispered, for giving me a chance. Thank you for being worthy of one. The three moons shone down on them, casting silver light across the garden. Somewhere in the palace, humans and Valorians were celebrating their new brotherhood. Somewhere in the galaxy, the Cricks were planning their next attack. Unaware that their enemies had grown stronger, but in that garden, in that perfect moment, there was only peace. There was only Jack and Lyrie. There was only the beginning of something neither of them had. Expected. Love. And it was beautiful. The wedding took place 1 week later, under the crystal ceiling of the great hall that had so recently been a battlefield. Princess Lyrie, dressed in flowing silver and white, walked down the aisle toward Commander Jack Sullivan, who stood tall and proud in his formal uniform. Emperor Zorath performed the ceremony himself, binding two hearts and two peoples together. When Jack and Lyrie kissed for the first time as husband and wife, the cheering could be heard throughout the entire palace. Somewhere across the stars, a little girl named Molly received a message from her uncle. It contained only 3 words: I am coming home. And for the first time in a very long time, Jack Sullivan believed that everything was going to be okay.